going up against the two strongest characters in the series. People often underestimate the disaster curse of the land, but as one of the strongest unregistered special grades, how does Jogo do against pretty much every other character in the series? We're gonna dive right into this topic. And I've got the man, the myth, the legend himself, as always, Broken Ronin with me.
Yo, what's up, what's up, what's up? If you know me, you know I'm excited to talk about Jogo today. It's time to lock in.
My man, the disaster curse of the land, stands on business. It's time to stop all slander. It was fully animated now. We can see him in his full glory. So let's go through the gauntlet with my man Jogo and let's take it from the top. Now, some of you guys may always ask why we include this person, and it's just to overall remind you who the grand puppet master is and who's really pulling the strings behind all of Jujutsu Kaisen, and that's Kiyotaka Ichichi.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, right? It's almost like disrespectful to call him a sorcerer. This is a guy, an entity, a godlike being in the verse that I honestly wouldn't want to put too many characters up against. This is a tough fight, man. This is a tough fight. I'm gonna be honest, because Ichichi just like that, but I look at myself and I think, wow, I'm really gassing up Ichichi versus Jogo right now.
What keep it up.
Yeah, what have my decisions come to?
Nah, I also heard that Ichichi was absolutely immune to flames and heat of any kind, and actually he just turns any kind of fire that touches him into holy water. But
course.
You didn't hear that from me. Moving on, we've got people like Mai Zenin, Shoko Iri. Actually, you know what? Shoko with reverse curse technique. Stop me here if I'm getting too crazy.
She gonna output it and cook him?
She's gonna pull a Gojo.
Listen. You know, curse technique, reversal, whatever the heck. Maybe Shoko's got it in the bag. I'll just say she should have been getting active in Shibuya if she was like that, bro. She should have gotten out on the battlefield. We needed someone like her.
Walking right through all that lava right during Sukuna and Jogo, just one tapping Jogo with RCT. Bop, he's done. Honestly, Shoko's the secret god. We're just finding out more and more about these side characters here as we go on. We've got to, if we keep going, things are gonna get out of left field. Actually, another character that I'm sure you'd be more than happy to get out of left field for would be Miwa Kasumi.
Sorry guys, you know, it's Jogo. It's Jogo till I die, right?
Wow.
Miwa is slightly different. Miwa is slightly different. Listen, if it's just base Jogo, Miwa cooks. Now, Miwa versus Jogo is a fight of epic proportion. If you're looking forward to Gojo versus Sukuna, if you think that was a titanic and crazy fight, Miwa versus Jogo is different. That's all I'm gonna say.
Listen, all I'm saying is me and Broken Ronin would both pay a large lump sum of money to any animators that would be willing to bring out the glory that is Miwa Kasumi versus Jogo.
Yes, that is actually very true. Go and let me see that. Let me see Miwa versus Jogo. I need that in my life, actually.
A character that actually we could have maybe somewhat of a serious discussion with, because we know that curse speech specifically is pretty dangerous for curses. Although I think with the way we saw Hanami kind of tank it, Jogo with granted lower durability, how do you think Inumaki Toge would handle the disaster curse of the land?
I'm gonna be honest with you, like, okay, maybe you argue that one curse speech kind of like it takes him off guard, he blasts away or he stops or whatever, but like if you want the really serious answer, there's two ways that this can play out, right? Inumaki like uncovers his face and opens his mouth to use curse speech and then gets blitzed and burned to a crisp immediately before anything even happens, or he uses curse speech a couple of times, it doesn't hurt Jogo in the same way it didn't hurt Hanami. You know, the funny answer is, I don't know, Jogo's kind of got his ears closed canonically by those little corkscrews, so it might just not work. He might just be covered with cursed energy, just, you know, stopping the sound from getting to his brain.
The same exact thing would be happening to sorcerers like, you know, Momo Nishimiya. Getting rid of tool manipulation, what's that broom gonna do? Absolutely clearing Momo Nishimiya. No matter how high she flies, the anime has proven that does not matter. Jogo can canonically fly. I've been saying it since the beginning of time, and now I have the validation for it. Panda is gonna be cooked like exotic meat. Nobara Kugasaki, do we think resonance, if it actually lands on a character like Jogo that is very fast, considered potentially, if not close to, maybe a little bit slower than Naobito Zenin, do we think Nobara is going to be able to catch Jogo with a stray hairpin or nail?
Something tells me no. He's definitely not as playful in his fights as someone like Mahito as well. So even if you argue that, like, okay, Jogo might be in the same range of speed as Mahito, which, by the way, we're talking about Mahito's clone that Nobara hit, not even the real version, you would just say that, like, Jogo just uses his wide range. Like, he has wider and longer range than Nobara, and he's significantly faster. She's getting blitzed like a lot of the characters are. We haven't hit that tier of Sorcerer where we can say, okay, now they actually interact and fight. We're still looking at Jogo kind of just be like, that's one, and then turn her to a crisp.
That is going to be the stark difference that you're going to see with a character like Jogo compared to something like our Mahito versus everyone gauntlet video. He does not care about having a good fight. He's not someone that enjoys the thrill of battle. In fact, it's something that Sukuna even harps on him on. He takes out Nanami in less than a second, although it doesn't actually kill him. It might as well have. He takes out Maki in less than a second, who only survives because of her special heavenly restriction, and he kills a projection sorcerer like Naobito Zenin, no problem whatsoever, all in the span of like probably less than a minute. So it's fair to say that a lot of these characters wouldn't even have the time to let their abilities even be known. Jogo just doesn't care to know what your ability is. He doesn't want to know.
Nanami surviving and Maki surviving Jogo's Fire Blast are one, just reflection of their durability and their resilience rather than like Jogo's weakness. And two, it's also gives you a little bit of perspective of how little Jogo took them seriously. He uses, I think, an individual finger to take out Maki, whereas he, I guess, kind of uses his palm for Nanami. And much like Dagon, I imagine that Jogo kind of instinctually figured that, okay, this guy is probably the strongest of all of them, especially with all of like the speed and the zipping around that he was doing. So then he spawned 2 volcanoes, which are obviously going to be equipped with a little bit more firepower to take them out. We know based on his fight with Sukuna that Jogo, if he's taking you seriously or if he thinks his life is on the line, he can definitely do a lot more damage to the point where he's taking out like city blocks with just this molten lava at a moment's notice. So if Jogo did run up to, say, Nobara, burn her, and then she gets up, right? He'll just do it again, but a little bit more seriously this time.
I mean, it's going to be the same for characters like, unfortunately, Naruto Shikamo. No kind of blood manipulation, especially at his low level, is going to be doing anything. Haruta Shigemo would survive getting cooked all about 6-7 times, and hopefully maybe if he checks his phone and it's 11:11, he may survive one extra time. But I mean, that is if someone like Kento Nanami is getting turned on like it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, just like pulled up on tapped and turned into a crisp.
No, not at all. I mean Haruta does not have motion like that. But I'm gonna be honest, Nanami embarrassed Haruta, and then Jogo made Nanami look like a scrub. So I mean, you do the math on that one. A character I would love to get your opinion on would be Kokichi Muta, obviously in his ultimate Mekamaru peak position. Mekamaru might be a little bit more tanky when he's in his giant like mech form, and we also know that like Mekamaru has like output on the level of a special grade. It's not really clear whether or not Kenjaku is referring to a special grade Curse Spirit or a special grade Sorcerer, because those things do kind of vastly change the feat. I've always assumed it's a special grade Curse because of who he's fighting, but in the event that that's the case, he may be using Jogo as kind of a litmus test for exactly how much power he's outputting. The only issue that I find there then is that Jogo can theoretically continue this level of output for a significantly longer time and jump in and out of range at such a high level that Mekamaru might not be able to. Like, I could definitely see those burning attacks doing some level of damage, although I personally would argue that Jogo has some level of resistance to heat. Obviously, Sukuna was able to eviscerate him, but that was like Sukuna. So take that way of being defeated with a grain of salt. Against Mahito, Kokichi got the benefit of fighting against a relatively short range fighter while also having range himself, but Jogo has just as much, if not more range, and I think he'd do pretty well. It would take him a while. I think Kokichi would actually perform like quite decently, especially because he'd have a counter to Jogo's domain expansion. Mekamaru is probably just more likely to lose out on all of his power. We know that he has to use like several years worth of charge in order to get that special grade level output that Kenjaku mentioned. So after like maybe a dozen or two blasts, he's going to be out of energy, whereas Jogo as a Disaster Curse Spirit has like just numerous times we've seen them just be stated to like have have like just this ridiculous amount of cursed energy. One other thing that I'm kind of interested in bringing up, just because it's not super used in Jogo battles because of like its typical inefficiency, and that's Maximum Meteor. And I think that would be like a particularly interesting ability to use on Mechamaru because of its overwhelming size. Sure, there are some characters that are really not that fast that have been able to dodge it, but they also weren't nearly as large as Mechamaru in the first place.
No, the giant mechanic kaiju monster is not escaping Maximum Meteor. I'm sorry.
Sukuna saying that it would damage him in the event that it hit is just a good enough statement for me to say, yeah, Mechamaru's getting crushed. He puts up the best fight we've seen so far. It's just not enough against Jogo. Jogo has too many different abilities.
And I would even call into question how much heat Mechamaru's robot would be able to withstand. I know you're being very generous, but I'm even completely curious if like Jogo would literally just fucking melt this man. Moving on to a character that's actually able to use water. Takuma Ino.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I mean, water versus fire, am I right, guys? That's like...
That's what Pokemon taught me.
Listen, bro, if Jogo's over Dagon, and Dagon's the water guy, he's going to wish he ran into Toji, because at least Toji didn't care to finish him off, right? Like, Jogo will just, he'll just finish the job, that's it.
One question that I would really actually be curious in asking would be how Jogo would interact with a character like the Inverse Curse user. We do know that the Inverse Curse technique basically is going to literally and figuratively invert any kind of damage that this man takes. Whether it's going to be a powerful strike, it will become a weak strike. If it's a weak strike, it will become a powerful strike. Awesome technique if it's activated, especially when you have someone like Awasaka who really knows how to use it to the best of its ability. The one thing about it is that it does have a limit, which is what Megami even says, and that's why someone like Gojo would just be able to mollywop Awasaka, because the amount of force and the amount of pressure that someone like Gojo is able to generate is going to be able to just completely break that scale. Do you think that Jogo's firepower ultimately is strong enough to just completely break that scale?
Yeah, it's definitely really, really hard to say. It probably isn't all that good against like other forms of attacking that are a little bit more unorthodox in nature. It's also part of the reason he obviously tries to bait him out with that Gojo thing. Like, not only is Gojo just super physically strong, but his attacks sort of defy your typical use of force. They're not just like regular straight-on punches, they're manipulating space. How does Inverse necessarily work on attacks that not only have the concussive impact of Jogo's Fire Blast and continuously burning you? Yeah, I definitely think Jogo like max output is definitely going to be enough to take Awasaka. If it wasn't enough, right, if Awasaka was really that broken and all you had to do was like conceal his curse technique, I don't see why Kenjaku's not using him in more serious battles. It's either very easily able to be figured out, or if you really think it's that serious, Jogo pops the domain expansion. He's like, all right, buddy. If Jogo can't figure it out, which is fair to say, like he hasn't shown like crazy battle IQ, he either just breaks through it through sheer force in like his base, or he opens a domain expansion to just handle Awasaka, which I think is a bit overkill, but it's definitely something that's quite possible if you want to argue in favor of Awasaka that heavily.
I think Necromancer, Granny, Curse User, Ogami, same exact kind of, we don't even have to spend time on her because no, I don't care who she brings back. I mean, obviously if she brings back someone like Toji, that's a whole nother discussion, but that's something that we can save for later.
Just in character, Jogo doesn't let that happen. The only reason she's able to get that technique off is because, you know, no offense to any Ino fans out there, all one of you guys, but Ino's just kind of incompetent. Jogo's just going to be like, oh, well, you're building up cursed energy for something. Okay, I don't care what that is, bye. Jogo's not waiting to see, he's not a Dragon Ball character, right? He's not like waiting to see what she brings out. He's lighting her up and he's going about his day.
The same can be said for when we get into the Jujutsu Kaisen faculty. We already saw the loss that Kento Nanami was given. We already talked enough about that. Utahime Iori, whose entire existence is to be a support character. Kusakabe, with absolutely no cursed energy whatsoever, was right to stay away from Jogo vs. Sukuna's battle. I mean, all these characters probably have great feats. I mean, we know Nanami definitely does. Kusakabe is kind of a sleeper agent right now.
What would happen is Kusakabe probably pulls the simple domain crap. He pulls it, he blocks like one really big attack, and then Jogo's like, okay, well, how about 3 really big attacks? And then he kind of just gets cooked. Because Kusakabe is so obviously terrified of Jogo and Sukuna's battle, special grade curse spirits on that level are out of his pay grade, which isn't even a knock to him. They're out of most characters' pay grades. Like, okay, he stops maximum Uzumaki, which is cool, but it's just like Jogo doesn't just have one move. Even if he wants to use the same move, just spam it, and then Kusakabe's kind of cooked. Out of the Nanami and Utahime bunch, yeah, he definitely does the best in my opinion, but it's not enough. He's not really putting up that crazy of a fight.
We can go right into Geto's family here, because I think after that whole discussion about Kusakabe, I think it's pretty clear that none of those people are going to be surviving either, because to be completely honest with you, after watching the anime again, questioned myself, did those two characters die from Jogo's meteor? Because they have not shown up again in the story since, so what else am I have to...
Yeah, they were higher up too, so it's very possible that Sukuna didn't give them enough time to get out of the way properly, so that would be kind of crazy. And even if they didn't, let's be honest, they literally said no. I know what Geto wanted. I know what we wanted to do here. Run, like, just go. The only reason they didn't dip immediately is because Sukuna decided he wanted to play around.
How do you feel about maybe like Miguel?
It's one of those instances where, like, if you're using the anime, Miguel becomes like kind of weirdly elite because he's just getting hit so consistently by Gojo without dying. But by that logic, you use the anime for Jogo scaling, and then he just he turns the block into molten lava. Yeah, Miguel can disrupt curse techniques in the direction where the rope hits. It's not doing anything more than that. Like, omnidirectional fire blasts are really gonna put him in the dirt. And if you use like manga to manga, he isn't nearly as impressive. I think he kind of gets bodied. Like, yeah, he's kind of known as like, I gotta hold Gojo off for 10 minutes or whatever, but let Jogo pop a domain expansion just because he's upset, right? And then let's see what happened then.
I don't think anyone has the amount of DDR skills that Sukuna does to just be bobbing and weaving, like, in between, like you said, omnidirectional fire blasts and like lava strikes and everything, if we were to go by the anime. Because like you said, the anime does give Miguel almost like an obscene amount of durability, especially after we know now what Gojo's punches are supposed to be capable of, bringing people like Hikari and Yuta to literally hurling. I mean, oh my god, Miguel might just be the strongest. He might be on Ijichi levels if we're getting realistic here. Jogo can just surround him in fire and it's pretty much over. I think that's the same way even when we get to characters like the human amplifier, Principal Gaku Kanji, coming out of his retirement to try and play his metal shows. No one wants to hear that, you old fuck.
Yeah, he's done for.
I think Jogo's a little bit more of a anime girl lo-fi kind of guy myself, sitting there smoking that pipe. We have a character that if Nanami's not going to be able to deal with, I don't know how well she would personally do, but Mei?
The only thing you have in hopes for her, right, is like, okay, no domain is really going to take effect, because I'm of the belief that like Wee should be used as like standard equipment.
Yes.
That sounds crazy. Wee is just very characterized to be viewed as like her property rather than like an actual autonomous human being. So I always view him as something that is like a tool for her usage rather than like a person that she sometimes tags along. All the crows are they're not really surviving all that long anyway, and Mei's strong, she's fast, she's a competent sorcerer, she's not that crazy. Wee can be taken out very easily too. Jogo's like ambient heat might be enough to take out Wee, and if that's the case, then a domain expansion gets even easier, and Jogo just kind of, I think he takes it pretty clearly. I don't think he has all that much trouble.
As the resident Mei supporter here, I will say that I do think, given that Bird Strike would hit, it does have a pretty huge potential to actually probably damage and potentially exercise Jogo. But I think it's kind of the same kind of clause as like we get in those volume extras where it's like, yeah, Itadori's Black Flash probably would exercise me if it hit me full power, but like that would never even hit me.
It just never comes to that, which is kind of the point for Jogo.
And then we have someone like Charles Bernard that's able to see into the future. He's going to be able to see himself in flames.
Literally that. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's all.
And we can move right past him so we can get to someone who's a little bit more fun to talk about, Todo.
Todo, I think maybe besides Ultimate Mechamaru, performs the best that we've had on the list so far because he's faster and stronger than most of the characters that we've talked about. I would argue that he's probably quick enough, especially with Boogie Woogie, to like avoid a lot of Jogo's like blitz attempts. I could see Jogo like almost like seemingly visually teleporting behind him, right? And then trying to burn him, and Todo like clapping his hands and they switch places. And I can see that being a disorienting factor at first, right? The problem is that Boogie Woogie really works well when you have like very targeted individual neutralize attacks, but Jogo doesn't have to go for that option. Once again, gonna sound like a broken record here. Omnidirectional lava. You can't really swap places with that and survive well, right? With Hanami, you can switch places with Cursed Buds, or you can switch places with Yuji, or you can switch places with a lot of characters. But with Jogo, if you switch place with some X amount of lava, you then just find yourself in more lava. The simple domain is definitely stopping Jogo's domain expansion from finishing the job, but I don't really think it's all that necessary for Jogo to take the win. I think he performs quite well, but I personally don't think Todo individually is on that level of handling a unregistered special grade disaster curse.
Jogo is just such a long range fighter, or has the potential to be, that he doesn't have to get close to Todo or even let Boogie Woogie become an aspect in the fight. Either or, I don't think a physical fighter like Todo is going to be able to do much against someone that can, again, canonically fly. The same could even be said for someone like Yuji Itadori, because everything that you kind of said with Todo would track for someone like Yuji. In fact, even less, because Yuji's not going to be able to teleport. Obviously,
or use a simple domain. Domain
yes.
expansion literally finish him. Like, I think a lot of people forget this. Yuji is not just immune to domains because of Sukuna. He's specifically immune to Mahito's because Sukuna doesn't like having his soul touched, right? If he spawns into Jogo's domain and he activates a sure hit, that's it. That's all it is. Yuji, so far in the anime or manga, has not displayed a proper anti-domain technique, even if you think Jogo was just getting like cooked in close range and somehow Yuji's overcoming the long range problem, which is like, sure, whatever. One domain expansion and it's wraps, right? It's over. It's curtains.
I mean, I definitely want to give Itadori Yuji his due. We have seen him multiple times be able to fight long range with, you know, filling a rock with cursed energy and then throwing it. We do know he's super fast. He's able to scale buildings when he fights Sukuna in the very last time we've seen. I don't want to make it sound like Yuji would have a hard time getting to Jogo, especially with a character that can canonically fly. Yuji doesn't have the durability feats that are going to be able to go against anything that Jogo can actually do firepower wise. Granted, depending on when this video comes out, and for the future of Itadori Yuji as a whole, this could change, and if it does, I'm sure Ronan would be more than happy to come back and talk about it. That being said, we're going to move on to the Dirtagonist, Megumi Fushiguro, Ronan's boy. Ultimately, despite the conversation of the technique being different, I think the result might ultimately be the same.
Megumi has a little bit more of like, I think, a particular like hacks to hacks counter, in the sense that, okay, he can fly, you know, obviously one of the greatest abilities in Jujutsu, the ability to fly. He has water, which is not going to really do much here, but he does have water, right? And then he obviously has like his own domain expansion, which, while not on the level of like Jogo's or any of the disaster curse spirits for that matter, it is able to clash and stall. But the problem is that it takes so much out of Megumi to actually clash against a domain of that level that he isn't able to fight himself. He actually requires other people to assist him in battle, like Nanami protects him from the Shikigami that Dagon summons or whatever. Megumi's shown like he's pretty crafty even against characters that are like a lot faster and just overwhelmingly more powerful. But when you just have this all-encompassing heat wave that you just can't avoid, and a domain expansion that even if you don't get hit by forces you to be immobile and like drain yourself of cursed energy while they can move freely, it just doesn't lead to a good outcome, in all honesty, right? You just can't win a fight under those sort of conditions.
As everyone and their mother is going to say, what about Maharaga?
The moment Megumi gets in that stance and Jogo senses like a crazy cursed energy, volcanoes are spawning, bro. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if Jogo's letting that ritual get off. Haruta, for example, tried to do what I think Jogo would actually do. He tried to be like, oh, no. What did you just try to pull me into, right? This cursed energy is crazy. I don't want this. But like, Jogo's actually fast enough to capitalize. And to be completely honest, there might not be like in the way that Megumi loses, he might not be intact enough to summon Maharaga at all.
This is definitely one of the situations where Jogo's personality grants him a win that he might not normally get, as you can see, because if Maharaga can't come out, then Maharaga can't get the W. But one thing that I think is a really cute thing to look at would be watching like a giant meteor get summoned, right? And then all of a sudden, it didn't follow star formation, so it's just stuck in the air and no one can do anything about it. That would be the most terrifying day or most terrifying drive home I think I'd ever have in my entire life. Kirara Hoshi, like, obviously when it comes to straight hands, Kirara's got nothing that's going to be able to go up against lava, fire, anything that Jogo's bringing to the table. But the star constellation curse technique, Love Rendezvous, is that like, do we think Jogo's going to be able to get around that? Because I guess technically AoE attacks aren't a loophole for that one.
If Jogo, like, obviously you have to assume Kirara has already put Jogo in a position where the technique is active, but it's not really fun to just say blitz and one shot in this instance. I think what people want to see is like how these techniques interact. In terms of intelligence, I don't think, and this isn't even specifically a Jogo thing, I don't think most characters in the series have the like just the trivia and then the ability to apply that knowledge like practically against Kirara to figure out the technique on the fly. You're only going to see that from like Gojos or Kenjakus or Sukunas or like Megumis or whatever. Like we're able to just like they use some like random information they found one time and then this actually applied on the fly. The thing that counters it though is just the domain expansion. Like Jogo's gonna be like, I can't hit you. Well, I've been down this road before. I'm not gonna waste my time. We know that like domain expansions eliminate techniques that stop the user from actually landing their attacks on their opponent. In a weird way, Kirara is a character that can force Jogo to use a domain expansion, even though in terms of like raw power, that is so much out of their pay grade.
Moving on to a character that I think will finally be able to get his true chance now that we can give him 2 arms. Do you think the outcome of Naobito Zenin against Jogo would have been any different if he actually did have 2 arms and was at full speed?
100%. He performed significantly better. He probably just kind of does Jogo in a similar fashion to the way he does Dagon, where Jogo's like, oh my God, bro, why are you moving like this? I'm getting frozen. This is ridiculous. I can see Jogo getting very frustrated and like, once again, Naobito does not have the attack potency to even threaten Jogo's life. Nanami, Naobito, and Maki were all like barraging Dagon, and Dagon opens a domain expansion not because it's like, oh my God, I'm being overwhelmed, I gotta bring out my trump card, but it's like, I can't hit you, so here's something that will make it so that I can. The simple fact of the matter is Naobito could not beat Dagon individually, right? He wasn't even able to beat Dagon if Toji and Megumi weren't there to like kind of like tip the scales in their favor a little bit. Then Jogo, who was just stated verbatim to be level stronger, is going to give Naobito individually a horrible time.
I don't even know if Falling Blossom Emotion would be a viable anti-domain option, specifically because like Jogo's instant hit, I would imagine, turns you to ashes or it melts you instantly as soon as you're inside of the domain. Like I don't see Falling Blossom Emotion being able to stop just pure heat. I think Naobito would just melt. I think, as is trend for a lot of these other videos, if you haven't seen them, definitely go check them out. But for a character like Masamichi Yaga, who unfortunately we really don't get too many actual feats for, we can only kind of theorize what their full power might have looked like. And it always comes down to the Night of 100 Pandas. What if Masamichi was able to have like 1,000 pandas all going at Jogo at once? But I don't care how many curse puppets Yaga throws at Jogo, I think everything is just getting burned.
It's over. I mean, it's over. He got cooked by a guy with an electric guitar. Like just bodied. No, it's over.
We already basically went through Naobito, so I feel like the same standard is going to apply for a character like Naoya. Do we think anyone from the Zenin clan is going to stand an absolute chance whatsoever against Jogo, Ranta, Jinichi, Shojiro?
No. And what's funny too is Ogi's gonna bring out like the blazing courage and be like, it's time to unleash my full firepower, and Jogo's be like, what are you doing? This is embarrassing. This is honestly, is this how Sukuna felt when I pulled out my got it. I get it now. I understand. Cause I feel like he's gonna drop a Maxim Meteor just to get rid of like a bunch of fodder, and then he's gonna be like, all right, cleanup time. They're just getting bodied. I mean, Naoya is the only one that you could even make an argument for, but Naoya is slower than Naobito. He doesn't have significantly better feats. Naoya just isn't as competent with projection sorcery as he is like when he's a human, like as Naobito is, right? He just doesn't use it to that degree.
Moving on from that, the only awakened sorcerer said to have any potential whatsoever by Kenjaku. We've got Higuruma Hiromi. I love Higuruma, but unfortunately, unless he catches Jogo in his domain right away, I think it's chicken tenders.
It's one of them blitz and burn, right? One question we still haven't had answered yet, and hopefully we'll see answered in the manga eventually, right? Is does opening your own domain to count as an act of violence? I'm still not 100% sure on that. if it is, I think Higuruma is probably taking away Jogo's technique. There's a plethora of crimes that he can pull from. I don't think that's the issue at all. Jogo's never been to court. He does not know how that works. Did you kill these people? Yeah. I mean, you have it on camera of me just burning people alive. Yeah, my fault. And then I guess he fights like with no curse technique and wonky curse energy manipulation. But I'm gonna be honest, it's hard to even say that Higuruma beats that version of Jogo because he struggles against a base no cursed energy Yuji who is strong, but like not special grade curse spirit strong. I don't know. We never see Jogo really fight without his technique. Whereas like Mahito we do, Hanami we do. We kind of have a gauge of how strong they are. But Jogo doesn't really like fighting up close like that. So I could certainly see that being a weird one. I don't think it really gets to that. I think a domain clash could probably be pretty bad for Higuruma as well. If they're just clashing their barriers and Jogo just walks up like, okay, well, this is all happening. Goodbye, you and your judge man, right? And things don't look all that great.
If Higuruma is able to take away Jogo's curse technique with fire manipulation, his cursed energy control, everything like that, ultimately, I don't think Jogo has any way to like get a W because Jogo without any of his firepower is a very small curse. He doesn't really look like he has any physical strength. I could be wrong about that. I'm sure he could, smack someone around. I would probably give Higuruma, I could see a giant mallet crushing Jogo, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, things just have to go in Higuruma's favor, but it's not impossible, which is definitely like, I think a first on this list, to be honest.
Past Higuruma, I think another Culling Game player that putting paper up against fire is probably not going to be a good idea, but Reggie Star, I think Jogo's just going to burn all of this man's receipts.
He doesn't even have to make direct contact. If he just makes the surrounding air too hot, they're just going to catch fire.
Yeah, it's a complete nullification of like Reggie's curse technique. At that point, like I don't even think Reggie's going to be able to really do anything against him.
When Jogo pulls there's fire above you too, that's going to be crazy.
I think the same can be said for a character like Hazanoki, who despite having crazy reverse curse technique feats, let's say even if we do give him the Shoko treatment and he's able to output that, or he's able to, probably not, or he's just able to just heal himself faster than Jogo can burn him, I think a curse spirit is definitely going to be able to keep up their fire technique a lot longer than a sorcerer will be able to keep up their reverse curse technique.
RCT also takes double the amount of output as like regular technique usage. Even if they were on even footing, Hazanoki will be burning through, pun intended, burning through all of his reserves at a much higher rate than Jogo would. This guy is not Gojo and Sukuna's domain. He's not like that. I'm gonna be honest.
If we were to put him up against some of the bigger hitters in the Culling Game, like let's say Sky Manipulation would probably be a very interesting curse technique to coincide with fire manipulation. Uro Takako, what do you think about that?
Can I be completely honest? I think Uro struggles with Jogo's type of technique in the same way that she struggles with Kurorushi's. Very omnidirectional, indiscriminate base attacks would probably give her a lot of trouble because, like, okay, for example, she's able to fight pretty well against Yuta, right? Obviously, Yuta, we're going to get into it, but Yuta is more impressive than Jogo is, right? The reason she's able to perform pretty well against Yuta is a mixture of like not only his own like hangups and holding back due to the context of his fight, but he's also trying to fight her up close, in which Sky Manipulation is really good. She's able to counter Ishigori pretty well because all of Ishigori's Granite Blast are very like linear in their usage. They're big, they're powerful, they output a lot of force, and they're very, very strong, but they're linear, right? They're trackable, they're traceable. The reason that she struggles against a curse spirit that is way weaker than her in terms of overall ability in Kururushi is because their attacks are indiscriminate, right? Like the cockroaches will surround you and swarm you very quickly, and Uro's technique isn't conducive to avoiding or like blocking all of those abilities. And I think Jogo, if he uses his lava in that like just all-encompassing manner, starts grabbing buildings and throwing them at her or whatever, like he did versus Sukuna, while her Sky Manipulation may be useful to some degree, I think it's actually an example of Uro being in a bad matchup. That large of a scale of an attack might give her more trouble than her Sky Manipulation is worth.
Do you think Ishigori, her partner in crime for that colony, has any kind of different results with his maximum output?
I'm gonna be honest, I do think he matches up better. I think one thing we need to establish is Ishigori's output is probably higher than Jogo's, right? And you could say that for a couple of reasons. We know that Sukuna, when using the same element as Jogo, just having a basic firepower battle, no particular hacks outside of that, was able to immediately overwhelm him. And this leads me to believe that in terms of raw output, Ishigori should be above. In terms of durability, we obviously know that he can like tank his own Granite Blast and like tank attacks from people that can also block his Granite Blast. I think Ishigori might just be a physical tank that can go up against a lot of what Jogo has. But while Jogo maybe in the best case scenario is outputting firepower relative, his durability is not as crazy. He gets hit by a Granite Blast, he gets hit by like Ishigori's physicals, which are just, Jogo might be finished, right? Like, I mean, Ishigori, I think, was able to throw out an attack that was stated to be able to like put down Rika even if she were fully manifested. Yuta's obviously like losing fingers and having to use RCT constantly to heal from his attacks. Jogo would be given a run for his money in this fight because they clash so directly, and Ishigori has the stat advantage where it matters.
Ishigori throwing hands back and forth with Rika is more evidence than is necessary to show that like going up against a special grade is not something that Ishigori has any problem with. Physically, close quarters, or even long range, thanks to the amount of output his Granite Blasts are going to be putting out. We've also seen that he's able to split the Granite Blast off into multiple different giant beams. There's multiple different things that we probably didn't even get to see Ishigori be able to do, especially because the Pompadour was something that was absolutely new to his character. It's also shown that in his previous iteration, he doesn't even have that. So it's curious to say if he had another way that he would output his cursed energy. I feel like because Ishigori is able to match Jogo in firepower, he's able to match Jogo in physical energy, and his durability is just so capable because of his cursed energy output. Ishigori being very similar to Yuta in the aspect of their amount of cursed energy having a huge result in them surviving a lot of attacks. I think Ishigori pretty cleanly takes that W. I'm pretty safe in calling that.
He has a domain to clash with Jogo, so we don't know which is more refined. We don't know what Ishigori really does, but I don't think it's crazy to say that it should likely at least clash, and then they would just continue their fight within the confines of their barriers.
The other character that's in Sendai Colony, Dhruv Lakdawala, I think because he mostly focuses on Shikigami, he has the whole orbiting domain kind of thing. I'm sorry, I don't see his giant gerbils doing much against Jogo. It's his third time coming around, and I'm sorry, bro, you died and came back 2 times. Give it up. Another Culling Game player someone that we get the most comments about on my channel, I don't know if you get them on your collabs, about Angel and how Angel's curse technique of being able to extinguish all curse techniques and barrier abilities and everything like that is basically an instant win against any curse spirit, which we did see it do significant damage to the King of Curses, Sukuna himself. So I'm of like mind to think that Jacob's Ladder is pretty much an anti-curse spirit weapon, and like most curse spirits aren't going to be able to survive it, but I'm willing to listen if you have any opposing opinion.
I would not only agree, but I'd also argue that the range of it also makes it pretty unavoidable for like Jogo. Because I mean, even Sukuna was kind of caught off guard by it, right? And if Sukuna, now I'm not saying Angel to scale Sukuna, don't think I'm saying that, but it's more so to say that like, okay, even Sukuna, who knows Angel, who knows what her abilities are, is like, holy shit, and he gets caught up in it, and he gets out because Hana is an idiot, right? I don't think Hana will care about Jogo being like, all right, I'm back, you know what I mean? So she's gonna keep that technique up until he's burned through.
So now we have 2 winners. We've got Hana Karusu. I'm sorry, no, don't let me give her that credit. We've got Angel, and we've got Ishigori Ryu as the 2 people we have so far beating Jogo, which frankly is a pretty good record going this far into it. I've got to give it to Jogo. But to put him up a character that I know you did a video on, Geto Suguru.
I think that everything that we have surrounding Geto kind of just like substantiates the idea that he is able to beat the Disaster Curse spirits. We have Geto taking on Yuta and Rika simultaneously. This is arguably, in terms of raw power, the strongest form of Rika that we've ever seen in the story. As we mentioned with Ishigori, taking on Rika and being able to fight her is crazy in and of itself. And Geto is able to do that in tandem with Yuta, but Kenjaku has it in his mind pretty solidly, in fact. If Geto had possessed all of his cursed spirits and hadn't diverted his forces against like other sorcerers and stuff, he would have just won against Yuta at that point. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Geto is over current Yuta because of all the new abilities that Yuta's picked up. It is to say that Yuta Rika blast probably would have ended the fight. It's also to say that Geto probably would have just been able to fight differently, use his cursed spirits in a more like overarching sense. He has his own special grades that he can pull out. Not to say they compare to Jogo per se, but if you stack up your own curses, you amplify them to their limit, and you just barrage anybody that comes across you. Like, I can definitely see that being a pretty useful tactic. And to kind of just put the icing on the cake, we even have a statement from Gege, like in an interview, where with cursed spirit manipulation, can Kenjaku beat the Disaster Curse spirits, right? And Gege basically says that yes, he can. It would be difficult. Now, I know a lot of people obviously make a distinction between Kenjaku and Geto, and rightfully so, but it's more so that this interviewer is asking with cursed spirit manipulation, because up to this point, we didn't know anything else about Kenjaku power-wise. And I'm inclined to believe that when you're limiting Kenjaku to all of the abilities that Geto himself used, they're definitely more relative. I do think that Geto is probably another character that we'd add to the win. Only thing that I think can potentially fudge the numbers for him is a domain expansion. We've seen Geto have have counters to it in the past with like Kuchisane Onna has her own like sort of domain or barrier sort of technique, but we don't really know the state of Geto having that currently. If he does, then I think he just clashes and then continues to fight. If he doesn't, I mean, I don't think he's just tanking Jogo's domain expansion, right?
It wouldn't surprise me if someone like Geto had like simple domain either or some kind of help. It's pretty obvious that if Geto is going to be getting the W, someone like Kenjaku also will be getting the W, especially considering that Kenjaku just is Geto, but like 2.0. On top of that, with all additional curse techniques, additional knowledge, additional experience, everything like that. Jogo, as you already see, has lost the last couple of battles, and unfortunately, I'm not sure if that trend is gonna really be stopping anytime soon, because his next opponent is gonna be Kinji Hikari. Now, Kinji Hikari is an interesting character when it comes up to the disaster curses. Base Hikari is already a pretty terrifying foe for most of the disaster curses. Granted, after saying that, I don't want to make it seem like Hikari is just going to be able to, again, be bobbing and weaving through projectile lava streams and machine gun rocketed ember insects. I do think Hikari is very fast, and I do think Hikari, even in base form, is someone that would at least make Jogo try. But when it comes down to casting domain expansion, someone who we already know, Hikari and Higuruma specifically, have some of the fastest domain activations in the verse. I guess it really comes down to, do you think if Jogo casts his own tug of war, Jackpot, or just the journey to try and get Jackpot, completely ceases? I guess is the big question.
That is what I would personally argue. And the reason I think so, right? The reason I think that the activation, so like Kari opens his domain, right? The sure hit will activate faster than Jogo. We know that for a fact. It activates faster than Mahito's .2 domain, which is already like one of the fastest domain feats we have in the series. But the reason I don't think that necessarily matters or pertains to like the ability being stalled is because we've seen sure hit techniques being activated, like for example, Jogo versus Gojo or Dagon versus like Maki, Nanami, and Obito, but we've seen them be interrupted by incoming domains, right? Megumi is able to stall the sure hit, and obviously Gojo is able to like not only stall it, but to completely overwhelm it. Now, I'm not saying that Jogo does that to Hikari. Rather, it's more, I would argue it's more akin to a Megumi Dagon situation in a domain tug of war in a clash, because Hikari is particularly strong against characters, in my opinion, who have no way to counter his domain expansion. If they can't stop him from getting into Jackpot, if you let him get hot, get his fever, right, get on a roll, I mean, you're kind of just at his mercy. I think if he comes in a similar way he did versus Kashimo, Jackpotted up, right, he comes in, he starts going at him, I could see Jogo having a little bit of an issue, maybe. I don't know if you think that the wide range potentially poses a problem for Hikari. The main issue I see with Hikari here is that getting into Jackpot is going to be the problem. Base to base, if you want to be charitable and say, yeah, he's probably like, maybe he's like Yuji level, right, in base. We've already established that Yuji is strong, Yuji's fast, he's durable, but he's not really enough on his own to take down the disaster level Curse Spirit. And I think that the same thing goes for base Hikari, and maybe could be overcome with Jackpot. You know, obviously Jogo isn't just smothering him with fire until the 4 minutes are up. It may seem crazy, you know, I know I'm labeled as a Hikari hater and this ain't helping my case. That's just what I think based off of the evidence that we have in the series. Maybe Hikari's domain is so much better than Jogo's that it overwhelms it, but we don't have feats of that quite yet.
I think this outcome switches potentially when you consider a character like Maki or Toji, who the domain expansion is completely null and void for. Toji versus Jogo, I ultimately decided that because Toji's physical stats are it, and Toji does have some pretty serious durability, although I don't think Toji's just going to be able to, you know, take a huge lava plume to the face. I definitely think that Toji is going to be smart enough to dodge the attacks he knows he needs to dodge and be able to slice through the attacks that he knows that he needs to slice through. I also feel like his extra sensory really helps him in that aspect as well, perform some crazy acrobatic feats. Most of the time, it would come to a stalemate between Toji and Jogo, because Jogo would not be able to land any of his hits and Toji would not really be able to get close to Jogo. But I don't know if you have a different interpretation of this battle.
The statistical difference is almost like, it almost puts Jogo in a position that he's been putting a lot of the sorcerers in here. Obviously not to the same exaggerated degree, but if you just use the scale of, let's argue that Jogo is low when relative to Naobito, right? Because you could be uncharitable to Jogo and say he's slower. You can be super charitable and say like, oh, Dagon just doesn't know what he's talking about. I think for the sake of like just being meeting kind of in the middle, saying he's like, okay, he's low end relative, you can maybe keep track of him, maybe now Naobito's a little bit faster. We know that Toji and Maki just verbatim could have at any time, or Toji specifically, but Maki actually like puts it into effect, at any time could have destroyed the Zenin clan, right? Obviously Naobito was a factor there, Naoya was too, and this means that Toji is at the bare minimum fast enough to deal with Naobito. We've seen this kind of play out with Maki. We see that she's able to beat Naoya while she's like kind of half awakened. It depends on if you think Cursed Naoya became faster than Naobito, but Maki is able to like basically embarrass fighters on that level. She's like so much faster, it kind of looks ridiculous, not because her physical speed increased, but because the precog is so ridiculous. In Toji's case, it's the inverted spear of heaven and soul split that makes it such a big difference, and then in Maki's case, it's soul split katana. They literally they have to hit one time, right? They get one good shot and it's kind of over, and I think that they have the speed. Jogo resorting to a domain only for them to not get caught in it is something I could also see really backfiring for him. So I personally think more often than not, Toji and Maki are able to exercise Jogo.
Another question, because we're starting to get into some special grade territory here, so I want to finish the Culling Game players before we get into some of the anomalies that we won't even really need to talk about because we know it's a pretty obvious that they'll win. How do you feel like Yorozu and Construction would handle Jogo's fire?
I do think this is probably something that Yorozu is able to take over Jogo. I know a lot of people think she scales to 15-finger Sukuna. I disagree. I think it's very obvious that he's holding back, so that's not really why she scales. The reason I would say she scales is because, like, okay, she's like kind of relative to a fighting force that Uro leads. Uro is obviously kind of relative to Ishigori and the Yuta that is, I would argue, holding back in Sendai Colony. Yorozu obviously kind of scales to that similar tier, and then she has bug armor, which can greatly enhance her physical abilities and things of that nature. I would say that Perfect Sphere is a really good counter if she didn't seemingly only use it with her domain, and Jogo obviously has his own that he would counter with. You can call into question how good of a matchup it is. Her range doesn't seem to be nearly as wide as Jogo's. In terms of just actual like concrete scaling, not necessarily matchup type, I do think Yorozu has the advantage, with maybe Jogo having a little bit of the edge in the matchup, but I don't think that matters in the end all that much. I think it is probably one of the closer fights.
Considering that the kind of things that she did against Sukuna are just her signature calling card, the attacks that she always uses and she defaults to, obviously knowing what Construction is basically based around, it might not be the most efficient use of her cursed energy, but we do know that she's capable of constructing even more than just the sand, even more than just the insect armor. So realistically, this is a character that can create whatever she really needs to fit her needs at the time. And now, obviously, they might not be as efficient, but I definitely think Yorozu has what it takes to get the W over a disaster curse like Jogo. And I also feel the exact same against a character who now I personally feel is brother in arms with Jogo, specifically because of the way that they got dealt in their final moments. Kashimo Hajime, who is a character that obviously I want to talk more about base, because in my honest opinion, I think Kashimo with his curse technique released shoots himself up to one of the probably like top 5 in the series. I think base Kashimo, okay, good. I needed that validation.
Wild with the curse technique unleashed. And he also just doesn't in character use it on anyone that's not Sukuna anyways.
Kashimo Hajime, even in base, with just his pure physical stats, cursed energy manipulation, and just the lightning strike that is basically a sure hit attack that doesn't require a domain, which is something that is purely unique to him, I'm pretty sure. One of the only characters that was pretty much able to figure that out, besides if you consider like Kenjaku and Sukuna's open domains, a different form of that. Considering that Kashimo was able to go up against a jackpotted Hikari and come out mostly unscathed, in my opinion, realistically taking very minimal damage, pretty much only even exhausting his stamina because he was placed in the water that literally forced him to get rid of all of his cursed energy. Almost kill Hikari 3 times, and if you consider that he was probably able to go for who knows how much longer after that, who knows how long the fight would have continued until Kashimo eventually got the W. Following logic here, if we're going to say that Jackpot Hikari can most likely probably take the W against a character like Jogo, regardless of all of Jogo's insane area of effect techniques, all of his insane heat, lava, everything that he can do, city building, destroying, is a character I have full confidence in saying he can bob and weave through those lava projectiles.
And I also think the fact that like if Kashimo lands one hit, it's not so much that Jogo will just be done, but it stuns him and it leads into other hits being landed. If he hits him once, right, Jogo has a lot of cursed energy, but the only time we actually see Kashimo's cursed energy trait not really take effect is in like ridiculous cases like Sukuna and Hikari having literally infinite cursed energy. Kashimo is already good enough in close quarters to handle Jogo, I mean, just regardless, but actively making him unable to respond or react optimally will definitely just allow him to build up that charge and get the lightning bolt. The thing that makes this fight longer and more difficult for him, the fact that he doesn't usually go for the head initially with those lightning bolts, that's probably the most difficult thing for him. But as soon as he gets the idea like, okay, yeah, I'm not just gonna keep fighting you and regenning. I've already fought someone that does that, right? I'm not doing this, not doing this. Kashimo is at the bare minimum in base relative to Hikari, with Hikari being able to win due to his like own intelligence and use of the environment rather than just like completely outstatting him and overwhelming him and physical abilities. You know what I mean?
We do also know that Kashimo has Hollow Wicker Basket. It is confirmed. Domain is also not going to be any help against Kashimo. He's going to have anti-domain measures for that. Finally, we can move into something that's a little not so much of a sure thing. Really mostly just a wild card, especially with what's going on in the manga as of right now. Even Kenjaku is worried about losing. So I really want to get your opinion on how Jogo is going to fare against a comedic god like Fumihiko Takaba here, because if the main villain of the series is sweating, I think Jogo is going to be for the first time, is going to be feeling the heat, if you know what I'm saying.
I'm going to be honest. I could see Takaba giving like needless problems. I'm going to be real. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this special grade scales to Jogo per se, but I do think it just speaks to the nature of Takaba's potential potency. The moment like Kenjaku brought out a special grade curse and that got one shot, I was like, oh, okay, we dealing with something a little different here. we dealing with something a little strong here. Kenjaku is literally saying if the fight continues in the way that Takaba wants, he will lose. I mean, he'll just flat out. He's like, okay, I gotta change this. And something tells me, right, Jogo may not be as tapped into the scene of comedy as Kenjaku is, right?
Because the worst part of it is, right, how Takaba's curse technique even tricks the opponent's mind into playing the simulations through as if they're completely like willing to go through this. Because there's multiple times in the fight of Kenjaku versus Takaba where Kenjaku has to catch himself. He's like, wait, what? I'm supposed to be fighting this guy. We've always stuck with the idea that any character that basically can just, domain Takaba is going to be able to override his comedian nonsense and probably be able to get the win once he's not able to bypass any of the damage nullification with the domain expansion. But it seems like even when fighting a character like Kenjaku, who we know has a domain expansion, for some reason either choosing to not use it after getting some of his special grade curse arsenals just destroyed by Truck-kun, whether you want to say that's because the open barrier domain works in different ways and doesn't necessarily ignore comedian curse technique, or the comedian curse technique legitimately is making Kenjaku participate in these goofs and gags so hard that Kenjaku doesn't even have the moment of time to domain expansion.
It at least shows that like without it, even someone on Kenjaku's level will struggle. Jogo can heal a lot just due to his nature as a curse, but he's definitely not as durable as Kenjaku.
I feel like Takaba's got the heart for it, and with his curse technique, it seems like he just has unlimited stamina or whatever his curse technique grants him at this point. Just breaks the barriers of reality. So it's not even a question of whether or not Takaba's able to win. I think Takaba just full on solos the verse at this point if he gets too powerful. I do know that you and me specifically have actually done a Yuta Okotsu verse the Disaster Curse video.
We said that Ishigori beats Jogo, right? We said that Hikari in Jackpot specifically beats Jogo, right? Both of these characters are either below or in the tier that Yuta exists in.
Controversial statement.
We, right? But like, listen, even if you think Hikari is like stronger, who cares, right? Yuta just has a better arsenal. He has positive energy that can one-shot Jogo if he lands it. He has curse speech, which he can use without the drawbacks of Inumaki. And then he has Rika and a domain, and now sky manipulation and Drew's technique, and who knows what else, right? Like, Jogo just does not have the versatility that Yuta does, and statistically, Yuta should be able to keep up.
And the last character that we're going to be putting Jogo up for his gauntlet, because it seems like, as I said before, we've reached a level of character that are just eliminating disaster curse level curse spirits very easily. Obviously, we watched Gojo bully and dog walk Jogo. Do we think Yuki Sakuma would probably do the same to Jogo? I'm of like mind to think, yeah, if Yuki is going to be able to block kick Garuda into the giant Ganesha curse spirit, utterly obliterate it when its curse technique was to like remove any obstacles in its path or whatever cryptic nonsense Gege was trying to pull on that, Yuki was able to completely just invalidate that completely with her virtual mass and just overwhelming strength. So I feel like the amount of power that Jogo has presented to all of the peasants that we've went through with this gauntlet is going to get a little bit of his taste again of his own medicine here when Yuki just outright bullies the shit out of him.
Kenjaku sees her use Garuda, right? And then gets punched and has his arms obliterated, and he's like, oh my god, can I beat her? Jogo's like glass cannon status doesn't work too well when he's fighting a character that's fast enough to kind of combat him. And Yuki is on the opposite end of a glass cannon, or maybe arguably not. I guess Kenjaku kind of points out that she doesn't get more durable with her attack potency or whatever. If she's tearing off Kenjaku's arm, one-shotting special grades super casually, even if Jogo's higher than that, like it just means that Jogo is not going to be surviving very many attacks. Yuki has her own domain expansion. If she doesn't want to use that, she has a simple domain, and then she has a partner in Garuda to help her as well, which can be pretty useful and even like hold down Kenjaku so that Yuki can get up close and start doing some serious damage.
The pure fact that her body was completely mangled and she was going up against Kenjaku, no trouble at all, and just refusing to heal herself just for the clout. Nothing that Jogo does or anything that Jogo throws at her isn't going to impede her progress to beating the brakes off of him any less. This is clearly a character that is going to be able to charge through anything Jogo throws at her and just punch him in the face, probably exercise him in one quick fashion. But as you can see, throughout this entire gauntlet that we've done, Jogo has actually made a pretty significant impact through most of these characters. I really don't think he starts seeing any issues until he starts reaching characters like Ishigori, Hikari, Maki, all of these Culling Game characters that are, honestly, a lot of people even debate if they themselves are considered special grade level.
I think it does speak to how strong Jogo is and the disaster curse spirits are in general. They definitely make a solid run at this entire list. And Jogo specifically just has like a lot of abilities or a lot of like in character sort of approaches to fighting that would make him pretty useful. Like he gets through like 85, maybe even 90% of the sorcerers in the series. That's not bad in the slightest. It's easy to downplay him because he fights Gojo and Sukuna and gets embarrassed, but like, I don't know, man, you put most of these characters we talked about against Gojo and Sukuna and the outcome is just as bad, if not worse. So
if you made it this far into the video, I sincerely appreciate you for watching this far. I hope you left a like. If you haven't already, please hit that button. It only takes 1 second. And I definitely want to thank Broken Ronin for joining me on this long ass video.
Appreciate you having me, man. If it's a Jogo video, I'm there. If it's about Jogo, I'm here. I'm here to show up. We Jogo fans got to stick together. You know what I mean?
Go subscribe to Broken Ronin's channel. And if you haven't already, check out multiple of the other Gauntlet videos that we've done, as well as the other battle collabs. We've done it for multiple different series, as well as JJK. So don't be scared to check it out. Well, most of them will probably be in the end screen right here. So if you want to continue your binge, feel free. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Peace.